What if the latest polling averages in each of the crucial battleground states in the 2024 presidential election were to shift by a comparable margin to the polling errors we have seen in the last three presidential elections? I have gone back and calculated the average polling error across 17 different competitive states between the 2012, 2016, and 2020 elections, so that in today's video, we can take a peek at what a potential 2024 Electoral College map could look like if the same polling error occurred in these grayed out states, based on the latest battleground polling averages from Decision Desk HQ/The Hill and Real Clear Politics. Hello everybody, my name is Ryan Guest, here with another video from Election Predictions Official, your go-to source for data-driven election analysis. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below and click that notification bell so you never miss any of my upcoming 2024 election analysis videos ahead of November's election. On your screen right now is a 2024 Electoral College map with all but the 17 states we will be taking a closer look at in this video, already assigned a rating based on 2020's results. Each of these colored-in states were decided by margins greater than 10 percentage points in favor of Biden or Trump in that election, and therefore are not likely to be competitive this year either. I should note, though, that the two competitive districts in Nebraska and Maine were both decided by closer margins, but we don't have enough data yet to include them in this video. Remember that 270 is the magic number needed to win the presidency. Democrats start out at 182 electoral votes to Republicans' 126. Now, as I stated at the start of this video, I have gathered the average polling error in each of these gray states over the last three presidential elections using a combination of Real Clear Politics and 538's final polling averages headed into those elections. I will be adding those numbers to the most recent polling average in every state according to DDHQ in order to produce an adjusted result. So for example, if the polling average in a state is Trump plus 6, or in other words, if Trump is currently leading Biden in a state by 6%, and then the average polling error in that state across those previous three elections was D plus 3, meaning that it overestimated Democrats by 3 points, then the projected outcome in the state would shift 3 points in favor of Republicans, becoming R plus 9. In another example, if, say, Biden is winning in a state by 1 point based on the latest polling average in that state, but the average polling error is D plus 2, then the projected outcome in that state would become R plus 1, as it would mean that Republicans have outperformed polling in that state by an average of 2 points, and so the D plus 1 polling average would be adjusted to become R plus 1. Essentially, if a candidate is leading in a state, but the other party has tended to overperform previous polling averages in that state, then we shift the 2024 average in favor of the party that tends to overperform. Hopefully I did a good enough job explaining right there, but if not, I'm sure you'll catch on as the video progresses. To switch things up though this time around, let's go state by state in reverse alphabetical order. That means that we'll start in Wisconsin, which usually comes last or near last due to its order in the alphabet, and also because it is one of 2024's most competitive states. Taking a look at the Decision Desk HQ and the Hill polling average here in the Badger State, Donald Trump leads Joe Biden by 1.5%, based on an average of 19 polls since November of last year. Trump is polling in 45.7% on average to Biden's 44.2%, though this is the former president's narrowest margin of lead here in Wisconsin since January, as several recent polls have shown a very tightly contested race. Wisconsin has notably been decided by less than a point in 4 out of the last 6 presidential elections, including both of the last 2, in which Trump won by 0.8% in 2016 and then Biden by 0.7% in 2020. In terms of previous polling errors, Wisconsin has actually overestimated Democratic presidential candidates more so than any other state over the last 3 presidential contests, with an average polling bias of D plus 5.3%. In 2016, Hillary Clinton led by 6.5% in the final average, yet lost by 0.8%. And then Biden led by 8.4% in 2020 and only narrowly won by 0.7%. Keep in mind that these numbers are weighted by recency, so the 2020 error holds more weight than 2016, and 2016 more than 2012. All things considered, though, this means that Trump's current 1.5-point margin of lead over Biden in the latest polling average from DDHQ is adjusted 5.3 points in his favor based on that bias to become Trump plus 6.8%, meaning that Wisconsin goes from a tilt Republican state on the electoral map to lean Republican, actually almost entering likely territory. For those of you who are new to the channel, likely states, the second darkest shade of red or blue, represent margins between 7 to 12 points. Lean states, the next lighter shade, between 3 to 7%, and then tilt states, the lightest shade, between 0 to 3%. I should also note that I am not predicting that these will be the exact polling errors in every state this November. It would be impossible to say that for certain. But these numbers do give us an interesting perspective on the state of play based on these prior errors. The next state on our list is Virginia, where the latest polling average from DDHQ shows Biden ahead by 4.7% based on 12 polls assessing this race in the Commonwealth. All but one of these polls has shown Biden leading, with the lone exception having the two candidates tied. Virginia is one of few states, though, in which Democrats have actually outperformed their previous polling averages, albeit only by a very small margin, as the average bias is R plus 0.15. Polling overestimated Mitt Romney in 2012 and Trump in 2016, but then most recently favored Biden a little too much in 2020. Either way, though, with the adjusted margin going from Biden plus 4.7 to Biden plus 4.9, the Commonwealth of Virginia remains a lean Democrat state. Over in Texas, the second largest state in the nation with 40 electoral votes at stake, Trump leads by 8.7%, according to Decision Desk HQ and The Hill, based on a total of 9 polls here. The Lone Star State has a historical polling error overestimating Democrats by 0.8%. That's influenced heavily by the 4.5-point underestimation of Trump in 2020. 538 had Biden within 1.1 points of Trump headed into Election Day, only for Trump to end up winning by 5.6%. Interestingly, though, the 2012 and 2016 elections saw the Democrats overperform, which does drag down that average bias to just R plus 0.8. Again, these numbers are weighted by recency. Ultimately, Trump's 8.7-point average lead increases to 9.5 points with the added error, so Texas goes down as likely Republican either way. Next, we head to Pennsylvania. The Keystone State is one of 2024's top battlegrounds, and the latest average from DDHQ and The Hill has Biden leading Trump by 0.6%. It's one of few true swing states in this election in which the incumbent Democrat is actually beating Trump in the polls right now, though it has been swinging back and forth and could flip once again to Trump any day now. Biden holds an average of 46.5% to Trump's 45.9%. But as we take a look at the previous polling errors here, they have overestimated Democrats in both elections with Trump on the ballot. While Hillary Clinton led Trump by 1.9% headed into Election Day in 2016, Trump won by 0.7%. And while they did correctly predict Biden's victory in 2020, they overestimated his margin by 3.5 points. So the average bias comes out to D plus 2.1, which means that Pennsylvania's margin actually flips from favoring Biden at D plus 0.6 in the latest polling average to now tilting towards Trump on this electoral map at R plus 1.5. And sticking in the Rust Belt, we move just to the west to the state of Ohio, formerly known as the Bellwether State, now a reliably Republican-leaning state. Trump is ahead by exactly 11 points, according to DDHQ's latest average of 10 polls. The recent polling error here is the second largest of any state, actually, with a calculated bias of D plus 4.7. Polling was almost exactly accurate in predicting Obama's margin of victory here in 2012, but Trump outperformed his narrow polling leads in both 2016 and 2020 by 4.6% and 7.2%, respectively. Most recently in 2020, he led Biden by less than a point, according to 538, headed into Election Day, but ended up winning by 8 points. So Ohio becomes adjusted from being a likely Republican state at Trump plus 11 to become a solidly Republican state at Trump plus 15.7. Down in North Carolina now, the DDHQ average shows Trump with a lead at 5.1%, according to 21 polls surveying the race in the Tar Heel state. Trump has led in every single poll taken here since March of last year. North Carolina does have a historical polling error, overestimating Democrats by 2.14%. Most notably in 2020, the polls here had Biden leading by nearly 2 points, according to 538's final polling average, yet Trump carried the state by 1.4%. RCP also had Trump leading by less than a point in 2016, when he ended up winning by almost 4 points. So, with a 2.1 adjustment in favor of Trump, his polling lead jumps from 5.1% to 7.2%, going from a lean Republican margin to likely Republican on this electoral map. And all the way over in New Mexico now, the latest average from race to the White House has Biden leading by 7.7% based on just 3 polls. DDHQ has not yet generated an average because of how few polls have surveyed this contest. An 8-point victory, though, would mark an underperformance for Biden relative to 2020, when he carried New Mexico's 5 electoral votes by 11 points. That being said, New Mexico is one of just 4 states where Republicans have actually recently been overestimated. The average polling bias here since 2012 is R plus 0.7. The race would therefore shift from Biden plus 7.8 to Biden plus 8.5. Either way, it is a likely Dem state. And with that, let's take a quick status update now to take another look at the race to 270 electoral votes, with just 9 states not yet rated. Donald Trump leads with 228 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 200 on the dot. Exactly 110 electoral votes are still up for grabs. Our next state is all the way up here in the Northeast, New Hampshire, another Biden 2020 state where he holds a comfortable lead in the latest polling averages. This one from DDHQ has the incumbent leading Trump by 6.2% based on 8 polls. The Granite State does have a historical polling bias of D plus 0.95, almost exactly a point. His final polling averages most recently overestimated Biden in 2020 by almost 4 points. His polling average, adjusted, therefore decreases from 6.2% to 5.2%, still a lean Democrat margin either way. Now, jolting ourselves all the way back out west, again to Nevada, Trump currently holds a 3.8% lead based on 23 polls included in the latest average from Decision Desk HQ. This is the narrowest it has been since January, but still an impressive lead nonetheless, given that Nevada has voted Democrat in 4 straight presidential cycles. The polling history in Nevada, though, actually suggests a slight underestimation of Democrats, though, just like in New Mexico, with an average bias of R plus 0.64% since 2012. It did overestimate Biden's performance in 2020, just like pretty much every other state did, but in both 2012 and 2016, it actually underestimated Democrats by 3 to 4 points. Now, if we adjust for this historical polling bias, the race for president in Nevada shifts from Trump plus 3.8% down to Trump plus 3.2. Either way, the Silver State would be placed in lean Republican territory. And then back to the Midwest, we have Minnesota, where DDHQ just released a polling average 2 weeks ago, in which the latest trends show Biden leading by 5.5 points, based on 7 polls. This is already down from his 7-point win here in 2020, and it will shrink even further as once again the final polling averages in Minnesota, dating back to 2012, have underestimated Republicans, this time by 1.9% on average. The worst of which in 2016, when Clinton led by 6 points headed into Election Day, and ultimately came less than 2 points from a surprise loss. Joe Biden is still going to hold Minnesota, though, as a lean Dem state, since his 5.5% lead dips to 3.6%. That would extend the state's longest active streak in the nation today of voting Democrat in 13 straight presidential elections. Now let's jump 2 states to the east in Michigan, perhaps Trump's most impressive state right now in terms of polling. He leads Biden by 4.5 points, based on 34 polls according to DDHQ. By most impressive, I mean that out of the 6 or 7 key battlegrounds in this election, Michigan was Biden's best state in 2020 at D plus 3, and Democrats have had a string of recent success in statewide and down-ballot races here since 2020 as well. For Trump to win Michigan by a margin this large would probably mean that Biden's chances for re-election are toast. And that's especially so considering that polling in Michigan again has underestimated Republicans by 2.3% on average across the last 3 presidential races here, including a 3.5-point Trump overperformance in 2016 and 5 points in 2020. This means that Trump's 4.5-point lead increases to 6.8%. Not quite large enough to make it likely Republican, it'll go down as lean Republican instead. But a 6.8-point win for Trump in Michigan would still be shattering expectations. Over in Maine now, there are not enough polls yet for DDHQ and the Hill to have created an average for this race just yet, so we will be relying on race to the White House's average of the 4 polls surveying this race so far, which is Biden ahead of Trump by 10.9%, in a state that he won by 9 points in 2020. Polling here has overestimated Democratic presidential candidates by an average of 1.65% since 2012, meaning that the adjusted result in Maine becomes D plus 9.2, still a likely Democratic margin and very similar to his 2020 margin. And then back to the Midwest we go again here. In Iowa, a likely Trump state by margin in both 2016 and 2020, the former Republican president leads Biden by 9.5 points right now, based on 8 polls in DDHQ's average, though we have not seen a new poll here since February. Polling has been pretty bad in Iowa in recent years, underestimating Republicans by 4.5% on average. It had Trump leading by 3 points in 2016 and 1.3 in 2020, only for him to smash those expectations, winning by 9.4% and 8.2% respectively. That means that Iowa's projected result goes from R plus 9.5 to R plus 14 on the dot, putting it firmly in safe Republican territory. Down in the Southeast we go now, starting in Georgia, where Trump leads Biden by 3.8% based on 26 polls. The bright spot here for Biden is that this is Trump's narrowest polling advantage in Georgia since last October, and down from as high as 7.4% in early March. The latest poll from the Wall Street Journal released this past week has Trump's lead at just 1 point. That is significant because polling in Georgia has actually been pretty decent over the last decade, overestimating Mitt Romney in 2012 by 2.2%, and then underestimating Trump by 0.5% and 1% in 2016 and 2020, respectively. That means that the average error comes out to just 0.12% bias in favor of Democrats. So the average hardly moves from 3.8% in favor of Trump to 3.9%. Either way, Georgia goes down as leaning towards Republicans on this electoral map. And with it, Donald Trump has now eclipsed 270 electoral votes all the way up to 271, enough to secure him the presidency in this scenario with 3 states remaining. Directly south of Georgia is the electoral vote behemoth of Florida. 30 electoral votes are at stake in the Sunshine State, where the polling average is Trump plus 12.9. This is the largest margin of lead for either candidate in any state per DDHQ and the Hill, with the former Republican president drawing 50.5% of support in the Sunshine State to Biden's 37.6%. This is obviously larger than anybody could have reasonably expected coming into this cycle, but the fact that Trump leads by a comfortable margin in Florida is hardly surprising, as it has been shifting more rapidly to the right than any other state in the country over the last few election cycles. And the polling error here is D plus 2.4%, meaning that Republican presidential candidates have overperformed by that much on average since 2012. The error was most egregious in 2020 as Biden led in 538's final average in Florida by 2.5 points, yet Trump carried the state by 3.4%. It's the largest margin for a presidential candidate here since 2004, and making it one of just 8 states where Trump actually did better in 2020 than in 2016. Anyways, Trump's 12.9-point lead over Biden in the DDHQ average is therefore adjusted to favor Trump by 15.3%, more than enough to place it in safe Republican territory. Penultimately, we head to Colorado. DDHQ and The Hill released their polling average for the state very recently, and it has Biden leading Trump by 7.8% on 8 polls. That's hardly surprising given Biden won Colorado by 13.5 points in 2020, and it saw the strongest pro-Dem shift of any state in the nation between 2016 and 2020. And out of all of the states that we will be examining in this video, polling in Colorado has actually underestimated Democratic candidates by 1.97% since 2012, the most on average. While 538's final average had Biden ahead by 12.5% headed into Election Day in 2020, Biden ended up winning by 13.5%. In 2016, Clinton led by 2.9% according to RCP and won by 4.9%. And in 2012, Obama led by an average of just 1.5 points, but ended up winning by almost 5.5 points. Ultimately, it means that Colorado's projected results based on that error would shift from D plus 7.4 to D plus 9.4, enough to place it firmly in likely Democrat territory. And finally, in the state of Arizona, Trump leads Biden by an average of 4.2% based on 32 polls in Decision Desk HQ in the Hills polling average. That's obviously a really strong number for Trump, especially given that he lost Arizona to Biden by 0.3% in 2020, and the state has seen a strong leftward trend in recent years. Trump's margin is only going to get stronger, though, as Republican presidential candidates have outperformed polling in Arizona by an average of 1.2% over the last 3 elections. Most recently, it underestimated Trump by 2.3% in 2020, as Biden only ended up winning by 0.3%, while 538 had him ahead by 2.6% entering Election Day. All things considered, this means that Arizona's projected result shifts 1.2% to the right from Trump plus 4.2 to Trump plus 5.4. It still goes down as a lean Republican state, though, irregardless of the adjustment. So that brings us to the end of this video, using the latest polling averages in key battlegrounds across the country, and then shifting them by the average error in the previous 3 elections. Donald Trump would win the 2024 presidential election with 312 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 226. Now, of course, we are still a long way out from November 5th, and these averages are certain to shift in all kinds of different ways before then. But this is yet another data point suggesting that the Biden re-elect is in a very, very vulnerable position right now. You can feel free to comment your thoughts and feelings about this map, though, in the comment section below. I appreciate all positive or negative comments. Also, make sure to let me know down there what other 2024 related videos you would like to see in the future. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.